Okay, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Although lately it's a little bit more than for rookies, huh, Pete?
Yeah, because Bill, you must be getting tired of talking to rookies. Don't you not want to get out of kindergarten and grammar school,
Yeah.
move up to high school, college, maybe even grad school?
Well, the fortunate thing for our listeners is that I've been using the podcast in other places. So I've been a little bit more, I've been using it kind of like a teaching platform for coaching and creative REI replay support tickets and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
everybody else, I think, is getting a benefit of that. I never really know because the downloads go up and down, and I don't know if that's really a good gauge. People send feedback, but I don't always get to see them because they're on platforms I don't even know about sometimes. So
Oh, wow.
it's a little interesting. But in any event, here we go. We're at episode number 362. The name of today's episode is how creative real estate actually works.
Wait a minute.
Right.
362 podcasts in, and today you're going to tell us how creative real estate works
Should have
now?
done it on number one, right?
Maybe.
It's taking
I
me
think
three
you've been
hours.
telling us all along, but you always have it refined in like something good to say. So go right ahead.
Here's the description. Are you curious or confused about all the pieces and parts of creative real estate? In this single episode, we peel back the layers and explore the fundamental principles that drive creative real estate strategies. We will break down the complexities and provide a comprehensive understanding of how creative real estate works, equipping you with the knowledge to navigate a once confusing subject for most. This episode goes way beyond theory by using our real world experience while personally flourishing in creative real estate by highlighting challenges faced, rewards reaped, and valuable lessons had by the end of this unique podcast. You'll have a solid grasp of creative real estate, how creative real estate actually works, and have some critical tools and knowledge to embark on your creative real estate journey with confidence and a deeper understanding of the strategies that can lead to lucrative outcomes. If you have ever been curious about the inner workings of creative real estate and wanted to unlock its potential, this short listen is perfect for you. That was a mouthful, wasn't it?
It certainly was. Nice job.
Yeah. I changed pencils. I write in lead pencils, and for some reason I don't know if it's my eyes or what's happening, but lately I noticed that it's a softer. It's not as dark as it usually is.
Well, you better check the number on those pencils there, Mr. Hawthorne.
Yeah, I thought it was number two. Anyways, so let's get through our housekeeping first. There is a link in the chat or in the description. I always say the chat. In the description, that link is likely to change because I've actually written a book on this topic. It's called "How Does Creative Real Estate Actually Work?" I didn't have it done. I have it done, but I don't have the pages to be able to get the download and everything off of it. So even if you're listening today, you should come back at a later date because you'll be able to get that book for free.
Wow.
So I wrote a new book. I've written that book. I'm trying to get the web pages up, and the next book is going to be how subject to creative real estate deals actually work.
Specifically, good.
That's next week's podcast as well. Anyways, so my point is that you should check the link in the description because it has right now it has some materials you can use which you will find very helpful. But if you come back at a later date in another couple of weeks, you'll be able to get the book. Okay.
Awesome, Bill.
Also, if you need help or any assistance, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. The support ticket's on the top right hand side, or you go to WhatsApp Messenger and type in Let's Talk Real Estate, and you get involved in our little mastermind group that we have there for creative real estate investors. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us and leave us a comment or give us a like or dislike on whatever platform you're on. every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. We Eastern time. We actually record this podcast on a live stream, and we live stream to Twitter, to which I don't know how that works actually, but mostly Facebook and YouTube. So if you go to Facebook or YouTube and type in "Flipping Houses for Rookies," you'll find us live at 9:30 to 10:30 Thursday mornings Eastern Standard Time. And if you go into those platforms, wherever you could type, you can ask us questions. As long as they pertain to the podcast, I will answer them. If they don't, you'll have to put a support ticket in at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Okay, I always hate that part.
Okay.
Here we go, Peter. Possibly one of the most important podcasts we could do. The basic on creative real estate. Should be episode number 1. And believe me, I had almost thought of shutting this podcast down and starting over again. But what the hell? I think people can have it. So what I'm going to concentrate on, because I've been doing some research. I've been kind of soul searching a bit, as I've mentioned on other podcasts, because training rookies has been a good endeavor for, 8 or 10 years. And it's time for me to change. I need to do some different things in my own mind. And I want to expand a bit, and I want to help. My new motto is I want to help people that will think I'm their new hero. Instead of begging to help people, which is what it's like with the rookies. So we created Creative REI Reply, which is a software that does all that training for you. I'm still very involved in that. I still have a lot of input with that. I still do all the support calls, but I don't do the coaching and stuff is all going to change, because I want to move on to these. I want to move on to people that have done a deal and have a little bit more experience. As I had talked about earlier, I don't want to keep reinventing the wagon wheel. I just want to make the wagon wheel go faster. So I'm looking for people that have a wagon wheel and they want to make it go faster. So that's what I'm working on. I don't know why I got on that rant, but there you go. So what you need to realize in this podcast is it has a theme. Actually, if you're on Bill's planet, the first step you take onto this planet, the first second you open the door and the light hits your forehead on Bill's planet, the first breath of air you'll take in my environment should be this. Real estate is made to take money out of it, not put money into it. If you can't have that concept, or you think that it doesn't work, or it doesn't mesh in your head, or it doesn't align with what you think, you have a choice. You can either listen up today, because I'm going to tell you the reason why that is, or you can exit Bill's planet. And I could tell you that the worst coaching clients that I have or have had are ones with money. Because if you can't make money with real estate without money, you will never make money with real estate with money. And I'm not talking about, like lending money. I'm not talking about equity, because the problem is that the world thinks that real estate is all about equity. And equity is the last profit center that we use, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah, because equity, unless you flip the house right away, it doesn't happen right away. It happens down the road. And other money can happen real fast right up front.
That's right. So we're going to talk about that today, as a matter of fact. So realize that the theme today is real estate is made to take money out of it, not put money in it. If you know how. And most don't. Which is why this is one of the most important things we, meaning you and I, could do for our listeners, is convince them that this is true. Because once that switch flips in your head and you realize you make more money without money than you do with money, you can't go back. You just can't go back. It's like, I'm gonna piss some people off right now. It's like, once you go Mac, you can't go back.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm offended for one. But you said it a lot of different ways, but don't people kind of dislike the rich kid that was given $1 bazillion and then he makes a few bazillion more, but he started with a bazillion? Don't people kind of resent that person? Oh, you had money in the first place, as opposed to the guy who walked out into the wilderness with nothing, shoes and only shoes, and he makes life worthwhile and makes things happen and discovers gold and builds a city and just whatever. I mean, there's a story on a network. I hate to diverge, but there was a kid in Africa, like 10 years old. His parents and family abandoned him because they couldn't afford. Well, we better cut one loose. They abandoned him in the middle of the night and left him alone. He was a beggar for years, got a job, started businesses, started rescuing orphans, and winds up with hundreds of orphans building a complex in the desert that he turned into an oasis of water and trees over the years from nothing. Who doesn't like that kind of a guy,
Exactly.
So starting with no money and making money, you got to be way smarter than the guy who just throws money at the problem, right?
Right, exactly. Well, people that throw money at the problem don't investigate the problem. They think that money fixes everything.
Yeah, it's the first answer. Oh, just put it on the credit card. No, wait a minute.
Or if you have employees, just fund more of this or fund more. I've been through that.
Yeah, hire more people. Hire more.
Exactly. All right. So before we get rolling, let's do it Bill style. Okay. Let's define what creative real estate is.
Sure.
Okay. But before we can do that, we need to define what most call conventional real estate first. And I call it the realtor system.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, technically, before you get started, I don't want you to think that I'm bashing the realtors, because I'm not bashing realtors. It's their system that's antiquated. But the problem is technically the realtor system is a monopoly. Because there's no other place to go. It's either you sell for sale by owner, which is on your own,
yeah,
or you use the realtor system. There is no other on planet, in America anyways, right? So they have a monopoly. And what do monopolies do? Lots of bad things.
They take advantage.
Lots of things, that's right, they take advantage. Lots of things that they shouldn't do, right? That's a very good point, Peter. They take advantage. That's very good. I'm going to use that one again.
Or they do whatever the hell they want to do.
Exactly. So when you're in the realtor system, okay, that's when you have a property and you want to sell, right? And it's all about its location, its beauty, its mechanical functions, what other people think about it. It's all physical, very physical, right? Location, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it comes down to what is paid, right? So what is paid? And there's a difference between what you pay and what's valuable. So in the realtor system, it's all about the physical aspect. It's all about, like I said, the beauty, the mechanicals, the locations. It's by the ocean. It's near a school. It's whatever.
Look at those countertops.
Right. It's very. What is the word I want? Yeah, countertops. Very materialistic.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good word. Yeah. Where creative real estate. Sorry about my throat. Where creative real estate is all about what controls the real estate. Like the deed, or an option to buy, or leases, right? See, when you start using those mechanisms, we're going to get in this in a couple minutes, but those generate value. Because what happens in creative real estate, and I'm getting ahead, is it's when you generate value, it's not what you pay that matters. I mean, you've heard me say very often, I'll pay whatever you want for the property. Just let me pick the terms.
Yep.
And I'm going to explain that in a few minutes, right? Before that, though, we have to absolutely definitely discuss what Nelson Rockefeller once said. The secret to success is to own nothing but control everything.
Mm.
He says separating ownership and control in estate planning is how the wealthy protect assets. Get that? Separating ownership and control in estate planning is how the wealthy protect assets. Now, when you start off as a rookie, you're not going to think about protecting assets. You're not going to think about all your tax deductions. I know I didn't. Christ, I could tell you I probably went 5, maybe 10 years, at least 5 years, and never, ever, ever, never, never, ever, never, ever once thought about a tax return. I just made my money. I did my stuff. At the end of the year, I would either pay or get money back, depending on what the realtor told me. I'm sorry, what the accountant told me.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Never realized that it was a bigger profit center. We did a podcast about those. I don't know, probably about 100 podcasts ago, talking about the 20 profit centers of a subject to deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what people don't realize is when you take a deed in your name, there is more money in the back end
Mm-hmm.
than the actual front end. Meaning the money now and the money monthly. Right, so the money now and the money monthly is a drop in the bucket compared to what you can make with your IRS deductions and interest deductions and all the equity and all the stuff that your CPA could do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as I go through these creative real estate strategies today, you'll soon see how we are controlling the property and not really owning them. Right, or when we do own them, we use property trusts. Property trusts. Those are two very important words. It's not a trust. It's property trusts. Like in estate planning, to protect ourselves from loss and damage.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing, most think creative real estate is for the poor. We talked about this already. And it's not. It's for the rich. Only the outsiders looking in that think that we're trying to get a property without a down payment think that it's for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize what we could do for them. The light hasn't shined on them with value yet. Right? Go listen to podcasts. I'm going to reference this a couple times. Go listen to podcast number 360 about being tongue-tied. In the second half of that podcast, the last 20 minutes of that podcast or 30 minutes of that podcast is when we take a $400,000 house and we show the seller where they could double their money because of the value we can show them, because all the things that we're talking about, all these profit centers we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So anyways, most people think it's for a poor business when it's really for a rich man's business, because the reason why is because the reason why we do what we do is because if you do it the realtor way, the realtor system way, and you're getting loans, sooner or later you cap out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So your loan to value ratio goes off. Right? So with creative real estate, you don't have to do that. Is this making sense? I'm doing all the talking today.
Oh, you're doing fine. I'll just jump in if you need me, like when you're sipping your tea like that. No, that's it. No, besides that, I mean, all the money, like you said, real estate is meant to take money out of. So you do conventional way. Like I said, probably last week, even somebody I knew bought a house, 20% down, and he's collecting like $300 profit a month. So how long does it take before he gets his money back? 10 years? Eek.
Right.
It's not smart. It's not good business. It's like, it's easy. If you don't want to learn anything, you just want to take the easy way out and not make much money, just take the easy way out or sit down and learn things. Bill and I, more you than me, but I've spent some time, money, books, piles to learn how to do this. It's specialized knowledge.
I'm going to talk about that in about 2 minutes.
Boy.
Oh my goodness, Peter.
I think I'm tracking with you today, Bill.
All right. So here's the punchline.
Yeah.
What did you just say? What do we do with money?
Well, we take it out of real estate.
Don't put it in. Here's the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
So creative real estate is more about leveraging assets,
Mm.
right? Where, which is why you don't put money in. So why don't you put money in? That's probably confusing for a lot of people, right? Why don't you put money in? Here's the reason why. The seller already put the money into the property, right? We're just leveraging that position.
Yeah.
That's why you don't put money in. The seller already has the money in the property. So why are you putting money in? I know we got listeners on here. Give me some love if you just had a cognition there or a realization or an epiphany. Give me some hearts or something, some thumbs ups or something. Because come on, that's pretty. I mean, whoever said that before? We're leveraging the money they have already.
Bill, you think they might need an example? Because I see two people out there, there's three now, scratching their head.
Yeah. So subject to means that we're going to take a property over subject to their mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take over their mortgage payments. Right? Here we go.
What do you got?
Dwayne, thanks, Dwayne. 3 thumbs up and then 2 more.
Okay.
Subject to, we're taking over their mortgage, right? They already have a mortgage. They already have the money borrowed. They already have the money. You go do a lease option with somebody. They already have a mortgage. They paid off the house. They paid cash for it. They already have the house paid for or the money in place.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we going to go borrow money to get the house? The money's already borrowed. It's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is kind of like, I'm going to tell you some Bill theory here. It's not good theory, by the way. But this is how I came up with this idea. And I don't have time to go through this, but I'm going to do it real fast, right?
Sure.
So let's say, Dwayne, he's having fun. Look. Bullseye, he said. So let's say you don't pay your taxes.
Okay.
I'm talking about property taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you owe the city or wherever the taxman the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Technically, because you haven't paid the taxes, you borrowed the money from the taxman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever money you were supposed to be paying the taxes with, you used it for something else.
That's right. And I've seen that many times. What'd you do with the money? Like, oh boy, they used it. So they got it in their pocket.
Right. So it's like they borrowed it without permission of the taxman.
Yep.
This happens to me. This happens to me with my properties occasionally. Like I don't know why, but tenants feel like that I'm the bank. So they'll like, I have one tenant that does it way too often, but she'll tell me she's doing the 25th. On the 5th of the month, I'm looking for the money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Christmas. Well, my husband got sick. He was out of work for a week, right? So technically, she's borrowing my money by not paying me the rent or the lease so that they can live.
Yep.
Right? So that's a weird example, but that's what I'm talking about. So the money's already borrowed. They already did what they had to do to get the property.
Mm-hmm.
All you're doing now is leveraging it. Right? Which brings me to conventional real estate, which is the realtor system. It's about what's paid. Right? Without any value.
Yep.
But in creative real estate, it's all about the value we give and not very much about what we paid.
Mm-hmm. Because sometimes, often, it's zero.
Right. So here's what I'm talking about with value, right? You increase your value let me get this straight. your value, which is what you talked before, involves becoming specific and specialized in what you do, right? And what you create for specific types of people.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about you for a second, Peter. So you're into music. I know this because I've been around you for a long time, decades now.
Yeah.
So suppose I wanted to come to you and learn how to play the flute.
Okay.
Would you teach me?
Can't play the flute.
Okay. But what do you play? You play the guitar.
I play guitar, keyboards, things with strings. Yeah,
Right.
keyboard. Piano.
So your education is specific or specialized in one area,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you got really good at that one area because, I mean, if you know Peter, if you went online and checked him out or whatever, you'll know that Peter is very good at a student walking in. A lot of times it's kids, but a student will walk in and say, I want to learn how to play this song. And you'll bring up a YouTube video or the song, and they'll listen to it once, and you'll immediately, before they're leaving the room, they'll be playing that song or chords of that song because of the way you teach them, because it's very specialized.
Yep.
Right. And
Sure.
and you get them to do it right away because of the way you get them to understand the way to use the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Very specialized.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how you make your money because people come to you for that, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to tell you is that the value you provide doesn't have to be at an extra cost. Right? So you could deliver value in abundance without extra cost. Like for example, Amazon does it. You pay I think it's $130 now for Prime.
Yeah.
And they give you free shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, I'm not sure how they do that as far as value goes, but that's value in abundance. Because I can tell you right now, just my wife alone, I would pay more than $130 a year for Amazon. I mean, she doesn't even go to the grocery store anymore. She buys off of Whole Foods on Amazon.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
we do that too. I wouldn't think we would do that. Like, what do we need that for? Okay, fine. We buy at Christmas, and then like packages at the door. It's like so easy. It's crazy.
So in creative real estate, it's not about what we paid. It's about the value. And the value is being specialized in knowing how to control what owns the property, the deed, the options to buy, the land contracts, the different understanding those mechanisms are the benefit to the seller based on their situation. Are you following me? Because a lot of times you can give somebody money. I mean, I could tell you right now, I talk to a lot of sellers that have no equity in their house. There is no money.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in creative real estate, there's only two ways to make money. To buy substantially below market value or cash flow.
Yep.
Those are the only two ways we make money. Right? So if you can't get a substantial discount, then you go after cash flow. I mean, let's just take one deal. Let's say you pay $200,000 for a $200,000 property.
Yep.
Right. And you pay 200, it's worth 200.
So there's no equity right now.
Right. So let's just it's a hypothetical deal, right? So let's just to show you. So you can't make technically you can't make any money off of the property because it's worth 200. We do because we increase the price by 10%, and there's a whole other story with that. But just watch my example here.
Yep.
So let's say you make $300 a month off the cash flow. That's $3,600 a year, right?
Yep.
You do that times 5 years, and you made $18,000.
You're not rich, but that ain't zero.
You do that 10 times a year, what happens?
Exactly. Now, on the other hand, if you buy the house for 200, it's worth 200, and you sell it on the market, it costs you about $20,000, $30,000 to sell it. You would lose $18,000 instead of making $18,000.
Right. Exactly right. My point is that the seller doesn't need money. In other words, the realtor system would bring him $200,000 minus the closing costs, which is what Peter's talking about, which is 10 to 15%. So it's going to cost him $10 to $15,000 out of his pocket. So the realtor system can't help that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But we can. We come along and say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll buy this property with a delayed cash out, meaning that I'll rent it from you and once I get a mortgage for it, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, we'll pay it off.
Mm-hmm.
Guy's not getting any money anyways. And you relieve him of all the landlording obligations and taking care of the house.
And save him the $18,000-$20,000 or more of closing costs that he would have to pay out of his pocket that he doesn't.
We don't have to put money in because he already put the $200,000 in.
Mm-hmm.
He already owns it. The $200,000 is already there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I really, really encourage our listeners. When I wrote this podcast, I had no idea it was going to be so popular. It is probably one of the most popular podcasts we have right now, an episode. It's episode number 360. It's technically named wrong, but it was where my head was at when I wrote it. Are you ever tongue-tied when talking to sellers? Right? And that's where this full concept of paid to value thing evolved. So, and you should especially listen to the second half where Pete and I role play how we give you value, right? Mm-hmm. I forgot the numbers, but I think it was a $400,000 house. When we get all done, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. If they had kept the house for 5 years or 10 years, it was like, I don't know, $360,000 or something like that. They doubled their money. Mm-hmm. Right? And value. And we went through step by step and showed them how to get that value, which, by the way, nobody on the real estate investing teaching circuit is teaching that. Nobody. Maybe one guy that I know of.
Yeah.
And he's kind of underground. Right? Because he's the one that kind of not only taught it to me, but we talk about it all the time. All right. So let's move on to some deal strategies. Mm-hmm. So how am I doing okay? Are we doing okay with the, what is creative real estate actually? I mean, you feel like this is beneficial?
Yes. I have one comment to make it really rookie simple from my viewpoint. When somebody listens to you say these things, you can wonder, I'm an educator, I teach music, and there's so much different types of music. And there's so many questions. Well, how come this? How come that? One person didn't sit down and write music for the universe. One person didn't sit down and write, here's how real estate works. Imagine if there were no rules, no laws, and just people. You walk up to a guy, hey, I want to buy your house. He goes, well, you got $100,000? No. Well, how are you going to buy it? Well, what if, and there's how creative real estate happens. It's just what if. What if I paid you monthly for blah, 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 to give you this? Well, can you give me a little more? Yeah. It's just ways that people figured out how to do things, because you don't need anybody's permission to do this. It's between you and a seller. You don't need the government's permission, the law. You have to do things, so you do what you say you're going to do. But if the guy agrees to take $100 a month for 100 years, who's going to say no? The bank? There is no bank. It's just you and a guy. So this is whatever people can come up with. And it's become all these things over the years. And they sound all highfalutin and have capital letters in front of the names of these things, subject to. But it's people coming up with this. Who comes up with this? The government, right. Universities? It's just us. So
subject to has been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah. So somebody came up with that one day. You think the government said, we allow you to do this? Somebody came up with it. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents. Is that the complication is that people come up with clever ways to do things. So there's a few ways you can go about this. What way might work between you and a seller on this property, considering his details? What can you think of that would make him happy? Right. You have to talk to him and ask him. And if you know
what do they call that? It's the Aristotelical. What is it? I always get that wrong.
Aristotelian?
Yeah. way, like asking questions and knowing what somebody wants, right?
Yeah, I
All right,
teach music asking questions. They ask me, well, what about that? And you go, oh, yeah. If you ask people questions and let them think, they go, well, I could do that. And then you help them be more, in control, not just pushed around.
right.
They can figure things out. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, let's boogie along because we're a little bit behind. So, okay, first deal strategy.
Yep.
We call it a slot deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's something Peter and I made up in a car driving to a deal one day. I call it a slot because it used to be, well, the way I envision it is you put $10 in the slot machine and it spits out 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
You pull the lever and it spits out 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's an acronym and it stands for sandwich, lease option, transfer.
Yep.
So that means your seller is going to give you a lease option and you're going to assign it or transfer to the buyer,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially the seller's. It's a wholesale deal.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of like you're getting the seller to sign an option with a lease attached to it, and you're assigning it to somebody else. So we're not buying a house. We're paying $100 non-refundable consideration deposit, right, for the option agreement, which an option agreement is the right to buy, not the obligation. So we're buying that document, and we use $100. You could use any denomination. It has to be paper money. It could be $1 if you want.
Yeah.
So we use $100. So we buy that option agreement from the seller. We sell it to our buyer for $10,000. We're buying and selling a piece of paper that controls the real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let me catch up on my notes here. So like I told you before, right, the only way to make money with creative real estate is equity or a discount, right? Either you get a discount or the monthly cash flow, right? And if you go to episode number 360, like I talked about just a few minutes ago, you'll get this concept 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the trick here is that the option agreement allows us the right to buy, but not the obligations to buy. This is just like the stock market. They call it calls and puts in stock market. Okay, go look it up on the internet. Calls and puts are like so if you had a stock that's worth $400 and you don't have $400, you can for $10 buy an option on that stock, and then tomorrow if that stock goes up to 450, you can cash it in and make the $50 minus the $10 for the option. You make $40. But if that stock goes down to 360 tomorrow, you just lose your $100 for the option, and that's it. You don't lose $400 per share. Right? And by the way, you don't have to use 100. You can use, like in stock, it might be $10.
Or you could wait till it comes around.
Yeah. Right. So once you sign this option agreement for full price, we assign it to our buyer for a 5 to 10% above what we paid. Right. And because 80% of the potential buyers looking for properties, 80% or more, I haven't done it since COVID. I don't know how to do it. Right. 80% or more don't qualify for a mortgage. And they have no problem with the elevated price issue. Right? Like I always say, if you paid me $1,000 for my computer today, I got a $3,000 Mac on my desk here. You paid me $1,000 in cash for my computer today. How much did you pay for my computer? You paid $1,000.
$1,000.
But if you came along and said, I'll give you $1,000 and swipe your credit card and made 24 payments to the credit card company, you're no longer paying $1,000. Right? I didn't make that up. That's the American way. So the house is the same way. If you want to come along and pay $200,000 for the price for the house, go to the bank, get the money, or give me the money, and you can pay $200,000 within 30 days. If you don't have the $200,000 because you're not qualified for a mortgage, then you have to pay an elevated price. That's the 5 or 10%. So instead of selling that property for 200, we're going to sell it for 220. That difference between the 220 and the 200 we signed as an option agreement is our profit. We built in our own equity by controlling the asset with an option agreement, which is the right to buy, but not the obligation to buy.
Yep.
Right? So the key benefit here is we're doing this with pretty houses, not ugly houses, because if we don't own the deed, we don't want to put money into a house. Right? So the key benefit is we're doing them with pretty houses, and they're easy to find. These deals are easy to find. Just look for like rental properties on like Facebook Marketplace, right? A lot of times what we do is we'll just send a message. We don't even look at the houses. We just send a message. Hey, this is the message. But hey, would you be willing to rent for a year or two and then sell to me? You do that. You type it once and copy and paste it 24 other times a day. Like I tease all the time while you're sitting on the toilet in the morning. Right? I tease about that, right? So you do that 25 times a day or 10 or 15 or 25 times a day. Within a week or two, somebody's going to say, yeah, we'll talk about that. Now, the glorious part about this is that you don't need to go have a Yale education, a 6-year Yale education or an 8-year Harvard education to do this. If you have rented a property in the past, you're 85, 90% of the way there. All you got to do is it works all the same way. You sign the leases, you have the landlord. It works all the same way. You already know how to do it. All we're doing is taking you the next step with the option agreement and showing you how to go get a buyer and how to buy and sell the option agreement, which is not very much to learn. You do it 1 or 2 times and you're an expert. Okay, so this is not difficult. This is why creative real estate is so awesome, because I've taken a lot of coaching clients, right? And within the first 30 days, done one of these deals, and they make $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, like immediately. Because you could, I mean, I've had coaching clients that will sign on with me the following week, get a deal, and the following week get a check. We have a guy in Creative REI Replay, which is software we use to find these buyers and do all the paperwork. He's doing between $30,000 and $50,000 a month just doing slot deals.
Unbelievable. Good for him.
Right. So the key benefit of this deal is they are easy to find, like I said, and easy to sell, because there's a lot more buyers than sellers, without any risk to you at all.
That's important, because I'm sure if somebody's not familiar with this, they think, well, geez, what if I can't sell it? You don't understand. People can't get houses. If you got one, they want it. That's
well. First of all, the only obligation you have is the money you put up, the non-refundable option consideration deposit.
Yeah.
So if you put up $100, that's the only risk you have. So an option agreement is the right to buy, but not the obligation. So if you put it on the market for 30 days, you can't sell it. I have a student that has one right now. I don't know why he did it. He had another coach tell him he should do it. It's a $500,000 house, and they're trying to sell it for $650,000. Stupid, and he's not getting any. So, but he did an option. So I think he only used $10. So he's got nothing in the deal, and it doesn't work. So now he's going back to the seller and going to whatever. But the point is that he's learning from the deal. He didn't have to pay a coach. He didn't have to do. He's learning from the deal. Which, by the way, we tell our sellers, well, we have a buyer's list. So even if you're brand new, you could say, I have a buyer's list. And here's the reason why, just what Peter said. You could put the house on Facebook Marketplace. You could put it on Zillow for rent, or apartments.com, or Craigslist, or all 4 of those. And all you have to do is put house for sale, no bank qualifying. And within a week, you'll have 50, 60, 70, 80 buyers that are looking at this house. Right? That you can promote to. So you're not lying to your seller when you can say that, right? All right, good. So those are the benefits of the deal. The cons of the deal, the bad things of the deal. You don't put a deed in your name. So you lose a lot of profits as a property owner. Right? And I'll explain in a minute.
Yep.
Which brings me to my next strategy. So when you let's back up. When you do this slot deal thing, or these wholesale options, they're good, but technically Kiyosaki talked about this in his cash flow quadrant book. It's just a job. Because if you don't go to work every day and find a slot deal and wholesale it to somebody, you don't make money. So in the beginning, it's good to make 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, and too many rookies get blinded by that. There's more money in holding the property and getting the deeds, right? So the downside is it's just cash flow as long as you're working. It's a glorified job that will pay you more than anything else. But the glorious thing, and the reason why a lot of people get involved in real estate, is because where else on planet Earth can you work once and get paid multiple times? A slot deal is not that. You're getting paid once, and that's it. You're in and out of the deal, and you're done. Okay? Which brings me to my next strategy, which is called subject to. This is a slang term. The seller will, so subject to means that it's subject to the underlying mortgage. So like I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, you don't need to put money into real estate. It's made to take money out. And the reason why is because the seller already put money into it. So if the seller went and got a loan and they signed a loan and they used the house as collateral, which is called a mortgage, right? The money's already in place. So now you're going to leverage that by telling the seller, I'm going to take over your mortgage payments. Now, a lot of people think this is illegal, right? But the seller will deed the house into a trust that we control and keep the mortgage in their name until we pay it off. Now, really quick, there's only 4 entities that can have a name on the deed. In other words, 4 entities that can own a property.
Right.
That's a person's name. It's an entity like an LLC or an S corporation or C corporation, a partnership, or a trust. So what we're doing is we're taking the property out of the seller's name and putting it into a trust, into a property trust. That those 2 words are not a trust, a property trust, which is very specific and very specialized. Okay. Once we put it into this trust, we now manage the property. It looks like estate planning to the bank. Besides the fact, the only time that banks want to hit this thing called due on sale clause is that they feel like the collateral is jeopardized. In other words, if they can't sue you or foreclose on you and get the house back, that's when the due on sale clause gets triggered. And this, the way we do it with trust, it doesn't even come close to that, and we never trigger the due on sale clause. In fact, nowadays, banks allow it. Lately, I've been running into in different parts of the country, there's actually attorneys that specialize in subject to closings and title companies, right? So, and I'm moving quick here because we have a lot more to cover. So this means you're buying this property by getting the deed subject to all the loan agreements the seller originally made when getting the loan. That's why it's called subject to, is because you're assuming all the responsibility that the seller originally made with the lender. You're going to continue those responsibilities and not change them, and know that you are responsible for them from this point forward. It's subject to those agreements. All right. Now, before you ask, because I know listeners are going to, before they ask why somebody would do this, it's simple. They have the most amount of protection in this transaction. In our world, subject to, they have the most amount of protection than all the other deals. Right? Does that make sense?
No, it seemed to be the opposite.
Right. I'm going to explain that. Am I going too fast?
No, it's,
okay.
It's there.
Because I'm definitely doing all the talking today, but I have a lot of material I want to cover, so I want to make sure we're done. And we have like 15 more minutes, and I'm only halfway through the podcast. So
I'm not saying another word. Go.
So remember, we own the deed. So if we don't pay, the lender or the mortgage bank will foreclose on us. Right? So here's what happens. They're going to do, the first thing foreclosure has is a title search. So they're going to go and check and make sure all what liens and what's on the title. first thing they're going to find out is the deed is in my name, the mortgage is in the seller's name. So when they go to do foreclosure, the foreclosure is going to say, as the defendant, right?
Mm-hmm.
My name and the seller's name. So I'm named in the lawsuit. I am going to court with the seller. How do I know this? Because this happened to me. Right? I'm going to court with the seller because my name is on the deed and the bank wants the deed back.
Yeah.
So they can go sell the property again.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they call a foreclosure. Right? So I can't just walk away. I'm stuck. And I always, 99.9% of the time, have more property than the seller. So I don't want it to infect the rest of my portfolio. So it's actually safer for the seller to do than any other deals. Because like with a slot deal or an option deal, we could just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no ramifications, which is why those are good. Those deals are good for rookies because it's risk-free. You sign an option agreement with somebody, it says the right to buy, no obligation. You just walk away. There's nothing the seller can do. Here, you can't walk away. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
However, as I spoke earlier, remember, we own the deed. So if we don't pay the loan, then they can foreclose, right? I want to make sure that's clear. Okay, so however, as I spoke earlier, because the deed is in our name, we have hidden profits, like principal paydown, IRS tax deductions, interest paid to the bank. We can write that off every year, right? For loan deductions.
Mm-hmm.
And most don't calculate these numbers into their deal, but the amount of this money is tens of thousands of dollars per year, depending on the price of the house.
Mm-hmm.
It supersedes the money now because when we buy these properties, we're going to sell them on a rent to own, right? So we buy a house subject to it. We don't just go put it back on the market. We're going to sell them to an end buyer, meaning a person that's going to live in the house on a rent to own. So they're going to give us money now, which is down payment, right? They're going to give us money monthly and money later, which is equity, right? So so what I'm telling you is the tax deductions and having the deed in your name doubles the deal. So if you think you're making 30 grand, you're making 60 grand. Okay, because of the tax deductions. And you don't know that and won't know that until all of a sudden you start getting property and you start making money and you want to stop paying so much taxes. Right? So your CPA will show you how to do that, right?
And we like going to the accountant nowadays.
Yeah.
We look forward to it. It's like a Christmas.
So the key benefits in this deal is you don't need to qualify for loans. No credit checks. Right? Never have anybody, you never fill out an application, never have anybody come anywhere near your credit. Or you don't max out your loan to value ratio. So when you try to go buy other houses, the bank says, well, you own too much, right? You got too many loans, right? Plus we get all these other extra profits I just alluded to, right? So just to give you a quick example, I know I don't have time for this, but like I have a property that I talk about all the time, which is how I figured this out. In February, I get statements from all my subject to properties. In other words, I'm paying the mortgages on somebody else's mortgage, but they come to me because I have the bank mail me everything, right? There's ways to do that. And this is all inside of Creative REI Replay. This is all done for you inside of the software. It's so simple. It's pushing buttons. We even have it so that when you push a button, it populates all the paperwork and you download the paperwork and have the customer sign it. I mean, it's really that simple, right? So my point is I have a house, a $200,000 house, $193,000 is what I owe on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sold it for $220,000, right? So I get a tax bill. I'm sorry. I get the interest that I paid from the bank in February.
Mm-hmm.
So I paid $6,600 on interest. $6,600 for the year is what I paid in interest when I make my monthly mortgage payments.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the deal. I think I'm making $390 or I forgot what it was. Oh no, it was let's say $500. I don't remember how much it was.
Okay.
So I make it $500 a month. I'm sure I'm making more than that, but say I make $500 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
that means that property just became tax-free for me technically, because the $6,600 I paid for interest,
Mm-hmm.
I get to write off $6,600 off of my income. Well, I only made $6,000 worth of income on the property, so I got $600 left to use somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? It's. Am I?
Well, that's how tax law works. There's certain benefits. See, there's benefits to owning property and being a landlord and renting things and all that stuff and paying mortgages, because the world needs that to happen. If nobody did that, we'd all be on the street. So people have to have businesses and rentals, and so
Right.
you get
So
credit for that.
we're not being landlords, because when we sell on a rent to own, they're buying the property. It's not a rental property. They own the property. We're just the intermediate bank. We're giving them a loan until they get qualified for a new loan, if they ever get qualified. And they do all the grass and the snow and fix toilets. There are none of those obligated. There are no landlord obligations. Now,
No.
you and I have,
we get the
have
benefits.
apartments. Yeah, we get the benefits. Now we have
get the
apartments.
benefits. That's the crazy part.
I have apartments that I bought, and the reason why I bought them is because I got them practically free and clear. So I have them, but because I treat my tenants like their owners, and when I put them in there and the way I put them in there, I have a lot less trouble than most. All right. So there's a way to do apartments where you don't have to do all the repairs, and we'll talk about that another day, right?
Okay.
So the cons of doing subject to is knowing how to explain to your seller so they understand and feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You got to know how to do that. Next, you're in control of the deed, or the trust owns the deed, but you're in control of the trust, which means the buck stops with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Having it in a trust and not disclosing you are the beneficiary on public record, because that's what happens with a trust, is the trustee goes on record, not the beneficiary, and you're the beneficiary, so nobody knows you own this property, right? Helps lawsuits and all kinds of stuff, because if they don't know you own the property, they can't attach it, right? But you're ultimately responsible, and it's not easy to walk away from. It's not like an option where, yesterday I wanted to do it, today I did, and I just walk away.
Yeah.
When you have a deed in your name, you have to get the deed out of your name, either by selling it or finding another investor to take over, all that kind of stuff, right? So, yeah. So that's the cons, right? By the way, this is mega, mega, mega legal. So if you've heard somewhere else that it isn't, it's a lie, right? And the politicians are the ones that did this. I don't have time to tell the story today, but they were building skyscrapers in Detroit, and they were aldermen making the laws in the early 1900s. And they didn't want the people to know that they owned the skyscrapers and were making the laws that benefited them. Trusts have been around since Roman times, so they figured it out. They put the skyscrapers in a trust name, and nobody knew that they owned them. And there you go. And it's been going like that for 150 years or whatever it is. Okay, so 100 years. So that's why they're that way. It's just incredible. It's absolutely, once you understand it, it is the most unbelievable deal. I buy most of my subject to deals for a $70 filing fee at the town hall. That's how much money I put in. All right. Owner financing. This is simple. This is the next strategy. Owner financing. This is simple. It means the seller's going to put your bank, the seller's going to be your bank and let you make payments to him or her until paid off.
Yep.
The seller's protected because you'll use the property as collateral. So if you don't pay, they get to take take the house back. Yeah. Okay.
Just like a bank would.
Right. Now, a lot of people say they'll do owner financing if you give me 50% down. Those are I'll call them jerk offs. It's not a right way to say it, but it's not polite words, but they're don't deal with those people. Right. So The benefits of this deal is you don't need a bank involved. The seller's your bank. Plus, if you do like I do, you'll pay no interest, principal only payments, and you'll get the house paid off in 1/3 less of the time if you use a bank.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a bank loan for 30 years, you'll have this house paid off in 10 years because we do principal payoffs.
Yep.
What we do is we give them more money. So if they're asking, like my example, if you go to Flipping Houses for Rookies, you can find it there. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and it says, I think it says Deal Structuring 101. And I have a video in there where I bought a house that was worth $240,000. I paid $260, and I made $84,000.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it for $260, sold it for $260, and made $84,000. It's creative real estate. Okay, so Flipping Houses for Rookies. Scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. I think it's called Deal Structuring 101. It's in there.
Yep.
Okay, so the cons of this deal is finding a seller that doesn't want 50% down. Or as they say, skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is usually an inexperienced seller that wants this. Okay. Now, I've done these deals because if the deal's right, you can go get a private lender and make them your partner, and they could do the down payment. And there's plenty of ways around this that you don't need to have that 50%. But usually what happens is I'll make sure that whatever they want for down payment money, I'm getting from my buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I think I can get the money from my buyer, like they want $5,000 or $10,000 down, and I think I can get that from my buyer and still make some cash flow now, I'll do the deal. But I'm not putting money in. Right.
Well, the first deal I ever did was a little condo, and I didn't overpay for it. I didn't pay him for a month, and I just made principal payments. And 4 years later, sold it. And I made $40,000.
Right.
So that was my first deal, and I didn't know what I was doing.
You didn't make $40,000.
Well, what do you think?
You made $40,000 the day you cashed it out in cash. You made money all the way before that. You made more than $40,000. We just haven't counted that money. But you made $40,000 at the day of the sale, at the closing.
It was a couple $100 a month cash flow too.
Right.
I don't think about that. I use that to fund my expenses.
Yeah.
I did the deal, and I took that money, and it funded my stamps and post office, letters and whatever, just funded it then. But yeah, I made that too. But that was like my first deal. I didn't know what I was doing, so this stuff happens.
Okay, so I'm going to babble through this because we're at 1 hour and 2 minutes, and I just want to babble through this because I think people are interested. So today will be a little longer than normal, but so a seller finance deal is when you have a regular closing, the seller comes to the closing, gives you the deed, you give him a note or a mortgage in place of the deed. So he no longer has the deed. He now has a note that has collateral to the deed. So if you don't make your payments, he can come get the deed back, which is called foreclosure. So what he's getting is a note or a mortgage saying that you promised to pay so much a month. So he's getting cash flow. But the deed is in your name. Now, if they're asking for 50% down, that's because they're usually nervous about relinquishing the deed or giving up the deed. They want to keep control until you pay them. So what we do is we use this thing called an agreement for deed. It's a document that is very healthy. It is probably the oldest document in real estate. It's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? And this strategy agreement for deed simply means you draft an agreement with the seller, and when you fulfill the agreement, the seller gives you the deed. And obviously one of those things is when you pay them off. Now what we do is we sign these agreement for deeds, and we have the seller put the deed in escrow, usually with an escrow company, or escrow means a third party, by the way. So an escrow company, like either the closing agent or an attorney, or there's companies that actually do this. So that means even if the seller passes or become incapable or something happens, the deed is an escrow, so when you fulfill the agreement, you can get the deed because it's already pre-signed and ready to go. Somebody just needs to give it to you.
Cool.
Right? So it is actually buying a house with the seller giving you a mortgage. Right? So what an agreement for deed is a purchase. Because remember, if we do seller financing, we have a closing. The seller gives us a deed, we give him a mortgage in place.
Mm-hmm.
What this is the seller, we have a closing, and the seller gives us a mortgage without him relinquishing the deed. It works exactly the same way legally, except he holds the deed. So he feels comfortable making sure we're going to pay him, because it takes it from, because when you do seller financing, he needs to foreclose to get the deed back.
Mm-hmm.
When you do an agreement for deed, it's now an eviction. It's a lot less legal ramifications for him.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's interesting, the details. You have the deed, I have the deed, and the little, foreclosure or eviction, just the little details. But again, people make this stuff up. Like, well, how if we do this? What if we do that? And it becomes formalized because it happens over and over. Somebody comes up with it and it gets used over and over.
Right. So my punchline, because we're out of time, right?
Yep.
So the point that I make is you don't put money into real estate, you take money out of it, because somebody else has already put money into the real estate and you're leveraging that money, right? And you need to know how to do that. And number two, your creative real estate is the devices that control the property, not the property itself. For me, I'm not in the real estate business, I'm in the paperwork business. But I don't talk about that much because it's not sexy. So think of it this way. When we're looking at houses, Peter, and I know what you're going to say when I say this, but do I care about the house?
No.
Right?
No.
How many times have you said we're going to a house and you got a deal and we're going to negotiate and you're like, you want to know anything about the house? Nope. When I get there, I'll figure it out.
Yep.
Right? And the reason why is because I'm not buying a house. What I'm buying is what controls the house. I'm either going to get the deed, or I'm going to do an agreement for deed, or I'm going to do an option, or I'm going to do something like that. There's only 2 or 3 ways to do it. You don't need to be a genius and know 50 different ways. There's only about 3 or 4 different ways you can do this. You can do it with an option, you could do it subject to, or you could do seller financing. Those are the 3 main ones. If you understand those, the rest are all derivatives or little pieces that fall off. Variations, yeah. Variations of those deals. But you can control a house with an option, you can control a house with a deed, like subject to, or you can control it with owner financing or an agreement for deed, like we just talked about. Those are the 3 or 4 ways. That's it. If you understand those core strategies and that you're leveraging the money already put in the house, it all falls into place.
And those decisions are not up to the house. It's up to the seller, the person.
Right.
That's why Bill doesn't care about the house.
Right. So, like I said, I wrote a book for all this. It's not in the chat today, but it will be in a few weeks. I'll go back and change the link, and it's going to have all the nitty gritty details. Not only did I write the book, but I read the book, and it's in an audio file. I've already done it. Yep.
You read the whole thing?
Yeah, 10,000 words.
Come on, you didn't have an AI do it for you?
I read it.
Wow.
So Cruz wants to know, ever done seller financing with a sub 2 at the same time? Yes, that's called a wraparound mortgage. I'm not going to explain that right now because we need to end, but go look up a wraparound mortgage because that's what it is. That means you could do subject to, and the equity is what you're going to finance from the seller. So suppose they owe 150 and they want 200, you pay 200, the $150,000 mortgage stays in place, which is sub 2, and then your note for $50,000 wraps around, in other words, goes on top of the 150 that they already owe. So it keeps so it doesn't trigger the due on sale clause for the 150, So you're saying you owe them 200. You're making one payment on two mortgages, on two loans. The first mortgage is with the bank. The second mortgage is with the seller because of their equity. So it's called.
But two different checks.
No, yeah, you could do that. What I do is I pay the banks directly. I don't pay the seller. So yes, I would pay two checks.
Yeah, just to keep
Actually,
it
to be
safe.
honest with you, the 50,000 I wouldn't pay anything on. I would tell the seller they would get it when they sold it, but that's another story. So, anyways, come back. I mean, in the chat right now, there's a link. I don't remember exactly what the link is, but there's a link in there. But come back and I'll have the book. You'll see the book, especially if you're on my email list. You'll see the book when it comes out. So plus in a book as a bonus, I put in the book how we find the deals and how we close them. So today we were just talking about the different types of deals, but in the book I put how we find them and how we close them. So as I said earlier, the book is free. So when it comes out, you'll be able to, if you're listening to this on a recorded link in a few weeks from now, the link will be in the description and you'll be able to go get it. It's going to be a free ebook. It's all nice and colorful and it's 8.5 by 11, so there's lots of information and it's an easy read. And like I said, I not only go through all the details I went through today, but we also show you how you can find them and do the paperwork and do all the deals and everything. Okay, so 1 hour 11 minutes.
In 11 seconds.
In 11 seconds. I think we did pretty good, Peter. Yeah. Hopefully, this was informative to people that don't know what creative real estate is. Again, it is not a complex topic when you break it down to what we broke down today, especially when you realize that you can break it down to 3 or 4 different deal strategies. And it's just, everything is just a variation. Like you said earlier, it's creative because of those 3 or 4 strategies on how you can put them together. Right? Your imagination is your limitation. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like the podcast or subscribe to us so you know we're here. Leave a comment if you so wish. And next episode is episode number 363. And the name of that episode, which I mentioned earlier, is how subject to creative real estate deals actually work. And I'm going to go through, just like I did today, I'm going to go through the details of it so you can understand it. Okay? We're out, Peter. Thanks for all your support, guys. And don't forget to, you're welcome. Cruz says, thanks very much for the stream. You're welcome. All right, guys, have a good week. Next Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to explain how subject to deals work. So don't be late. Cool, guys. Over and out.